Van Northcross. I live in West Barnstable. Been back in the marshes there for 38 years.
How long have you been on the Cape?
A little more than 40 years. I originally came here in 1968 and moved here permanently in 1970. I've been here just about my entire adult working life. Well, it was really an exciting time in the late 1970s, early 1980s for me personally. That was when I first got involved with the old Downtown Hyannis Association. There were a lot of Main Street issues in those days that we were working very hard to overcome. And in 1978, the selectmen put together what they called the Barnstable Committee for Growth and Change. And they gave them a 60-day mandate to come up with an action plan for the revitalization of Hyannis. And they did their work, made their report to the selectmen, and as a result of that, in 1978, they made the committee permanent. Ken Shaughnessy was its chairman, and it was at that point that I got involved. I became, in that same year, the executive director of the Downtown Hyannis Association, and it was also the same year that I really met and started dating my future wife, Wendy. So that was a time in my life that I remember very well, very distinctly, and with a great deal of excitement. And throughout 1979, 1980, the Barnstable Committee for Growth and Change had a lot of successes, actually. At one point, believe it or not, the village green out here was slated to become a parking lot. And I actually saw some design work for that. But we convinced them, we were able to convince them that it should be a village green. The old normal school building, which is now the town hall, at one point was slated for demolition. And we were able to convince them to move town hall into it. It took a lot of work. We had a lot of our meetings in what's now the town council chamber. It was very rough in those days. It was a lot of exposed, crumbling brick and things of that nature. But I just remember that as being a really exciting time. And we had some good successes. Which bandstand? There have been several. There have been several bandstands. Originally, there was a trailer that the town band would use, and they would have concerts in the summer. And then my good friend Ken Shaughnessy was able to put together some workmen and a load of lumber and build a temporary bandstand on the site of where the current one now stands. It served its purpose for a while, but eventually that had to be revitalized as well. So.
Didn't he do that overnight?
He put,
is that a true story?
That is a true story, and it was the way Ken would do things. My favorite memory of Ken Shaughnessy was actually the Christmas season in the 1980s, when some local folks had gotten control of the corner of South Street and Ocean Street. There used to be a couple of houses right there, and they got control of it, and were going to tear it down and build a 115-unit motel right there on the corner, which would have been like the Berlin Wall in between downtown Hyannis and its waterfront. We went to bat and got some people involved, and under Ken's leadership, we got a special meeting of the town meeting. We still had the town meeting form of government in those days, and were able to put together an article to buy that property. And the houses were removed. It was landscaped into what's now Azleton Park, and a beautiful part of we always talked about the walkway to the sea from downtown Hyannis through the village green, which the old Barnstable Heritage Group was responsible for delivering, and now Azleton Park, which has been a huge improvement to the whole area. It was well worth the money that was spent. I don't know how you would replicate that today. It was one of our successes. Everything we tried to do was not a success. We had an opportunity at one of the town meetings to purchase the old Penn Central property where the transportation building now is. We had an opportunity to buy that entire 12-acre parcel for $350,000. And we came close, but we missed. We missed by a couple of votes at that town meeting of getting that under control for the town. But we kept working at it, and it's eventually become the right use for that property. Well, that goes back to 1980, 81, 82, those years when I was the executive director of the Downtown Hyannis Association. You also had another business group, the Hyannis Board of Trade, and there was a lot of cross-membership of both those organizations. And we had often talked about melding the two groups into one. And there was a group that met for the better part of a year, Dick French representing the Downtown Hyannis Association, and Shirley Shaughnessy representing the Hyannis Board of Trade. We met in the boardroom of Cape Cod Bank and Trust for almost a year. Myself, Charlie Leonard, Ken Shaughnessy. The problem with starting to name names is you're going to forget somebody. Hank Farnham was very much involved in all of that. And we hammered out the bylaws and the framework for the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce. And at a special meeting of both groups, the board of directors and membership of the Downtown Hyannis Association and their counterparts on the Hyannis Board of Trade, we met together under the leadership of V.J. Catania, who was a member of both groups, and it was voted to discontinue both those groups and form the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce, and that was in 1983. And later, you were Lynn Gobeil was one of our directors, and there were one or two others, and my wife Wendy took it over in 1989.
Lynn Poyant?
And she was followed by Lynn Poyant, and there have been a couple since then. Well, yes, and I would say it's always been, you want to talk about the strengths of the town of Barnstable, it's always been the people here. I mean, people really understand, from the administrators in the town government to the business people, the property owners, they've all kind of shared a vision, and each group that has come in and built on the work of the group that went before has really carried it to the next level where it needed to be. The town has really gone in a really good direction for the last 20 or 30 years, in my opinion.
Let's look forward.
Well, I think our challenges begin and end with our young people. It's the opportunities that we're able to create here on the Cape that are going to keep some of our young people here, keep our young families here, to have the opportunity to get into a first home, to have the opportunity to build a career here on the Cape and raise a family. We can't keep aging out our demographic. We've got to get a little bit younger as a town, and I think that's our challenge. That and this isn't a challenge just for the town of Barnstable, and it isn't just a challenge for Cape Cod. It's a challenge for all communities anywhere, and it's this insidious problem with opiate abuse and drug abuse. We've got to get into our schools sooner and earlier, and I'm glad to see that the town of Barnstable is in a leadership position in doing that, in trying to get into our schools at a very early age and educate people about the dangers of that and what a cancer that can be on society. Well, like a lot of people that come to Cape Cod for the first time that weren't born and raised here, I came here when I was in college. I came here for the summer. I came here to have a good time and enjoy a place that I'd heard about all my life. And I was fortunate enough to get a job on the Hyannis waterfront. When I came here in 1968, the Hyannis waterfront looked nothing like it does now. The Steamship Authority was not there. The High Line was not there. The docks where the Steamship Authority sails from now were owned by a man named Ted Gelinas. And Ted Gelinas ran the Nantucket Express lines, and he had a couple of boats that were known as the Tech Fleet, T-E-K, Tech Fleet. There was the Catering Tech and the Catherine Tech, and that's where I first knew Tom Lynch. He and his brothers, John and Jim, for many summers had worked for Ted Gelinas and those tech boats. And I was able to get a job on one of those boats as a deckhand. And I sailed every day from Hyannis to Oak Bluffs and Martha's Vineyard on board the Catering Tech. It was a great summer job, and the Catering Tech used to dock in a slip that the Steamship Authority filled in when they took that over, but it used to dock practically right next to Baxter's Boathouse. And I ate just about every supper that summer of '68 at Baxter's. It was... in those days, you could buy a fish plate for 99 cents, so it wasn't onerous to do that at all. I moved here permanently after college in 1970. I had one other job outside of Cape Cod, working for a media group that was mostly out west, newspaper, television, that sort of thing. But I wasn't happy living where their corporate headquarters were in Arkansas. So I moved here permanently in the fall of 1970. And again, was very fortunate to be employed by the Penn family. They hired me for Christmas help, actually, to just help out with that very busy season between Thanksgiving and Christmas, with the understanding that when Christmas was over, the job would be over. But it just so happened that during that 6, 7, 8 week time frame that was going on, Milton Penn was informed that the person who used to do all of his advertising was taking another job in another state. And so he called me in, asked me if I had a portfolio or anything I could show him, and I did. Showed him some of my work from the Donray Media Group. And he said, well, how would you like to take a shot at doing my advertising for me? I said, I would love the opportunity. And that morphed into a 23-year career that with Puritan and the Penn family, an opportunity that I thoroughly enjoyed every year of and really appreciate to this day. It did. And, you know, it's funny you would mention that. It was a summer clearance sale, and it was the summer of 1976. And in 72-point type, and they set their own type in those days. I didn't have the ability to do that. This was a little before computer work and things like that. But we were having a clearance on knit shirts, and they neglected to use the letter R in the word shirts. And I still, how many years ago is that now? 76 to now. People still talk about that ad sometimes, and I still see old yellowed copies of it scotch taped to walls from time to time.
Sure.
It was humorous to everyone except me and Milton. Well, I would say my most exciting day in the town of Barnstable. Well, if you were to ask me that personally, of course I would say it was the birth of my daughter Alexis, or the day Wendy and I stood in the historical 1717 meeting house in West Barnstable and got married. But if you want to talk about an exciting day for the town of Barnstable, I would have to say it was the day in 2007 when I was privileged to be part of a town of Barnstable delegation that went on stage in Anaheim, California, in front of the National Civic League and competed in the All-America City competition. That was a day that I was never so proud in my life to be part of the town of Barnstable. We had exactly 10 minutes to tell our story on stage to a national audience, to a national jury from the National Civic League, why we should be an all-American city. And if there's any city or town or village in America that deserves that designation, it's the town of Barnstable. And it was my privilege to lead the group on stage, along with that wonderful choir under the direction of Reverend Bernard Harris at the Zion Union Baptist Church, singing that wonderful spiritual that they had adopted to the town of Barnstable. We welcome you to Barnstable. We went on stage. John Sullivan and Ed O'Toole had rehearsed us for weeks and weeks and weeks down on the stage of Barnstable High School about how to conduct ourselves, how to get on and off stage in exactly 10 minutes, not to bust that time frame. And we went up there with town councilors, the town manager, the assistant town manager, the Barnstable Housing Authority, the Youth and Communities Director. And we didn't just walk on stage and make a presentation. We walked in that auditorium and we kicked the doors off the hinges. There was no doubt that we were going to be an all-American city. And we started with the people of the First Light, the Wampanoag Indians, how they welcomed the pilgrims to the town, and went on from there. And we got on and off stage in exactly the right amount of time. And when we walked out of that, and again, Ed O'Toole and John Sullivan had been very careful with us. They said, you're going to go off and the next group is going to come on, and you don't want to be out in the hallway making a commotion, because that's going to influence the judges about what they just heard from you. Be as silent as you can. Clear the building, and then talk to each other if you must. And we walked out. We were so excited, but we did it in silence. We went right through the lobby of the hotel there in Anaheim, out the doors, into the sunshine. The doors closed behind us, and we just exploded. I mean, we were so excited. Some people were crying, and we were hugging each other. And I was never, ever so proud to be part of the town of Barnstable and be representing the town of Barnstable as I was that day. And of course, we were named the next day when they made the announcements. We were an all-American city, and we are to this day an all-American city in the eyes of the National Civic League. But I just wish that everyone who lives in Barnstable and works in Barnstable could have been with us that day, could have seen that, could have shared that emotion and that excitement. It was really something to be a part of. Well, Wendy and I for years have been on what we call the Dead President's Tour. We enjoy going to presidential homes, presidential libraries, presidential sites throughout the country, and it was really keyed with Wendy's involvement with the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce. People used to show up at their offices all the time, wanting to see President Kennedy, wanting to know how they could visit the president's home, get to know the Kennedy family a little bit. And it was different from visiting Monticello or Mount Vernon or something like that. Hyannisport is a neighborhood, and there are people living in those houses. And you can't just send people down into the neighborhood to look around at their leisure, you know. And Wendy and her staff easily recognized the need to send people somewhere where they could get to know President Kennedy a little bit. So they established the photo exhibit in the Old Town Hall building there and became known as the JFK Hyannis Museum. I remember helping Wendy rip apart some of those old offices in there on my hands and knees, pulling up carpeting and things like that. It was a little raw in the beginning, what we had to offer, but it built and it built and it built. And then Wendy was invited to Atlanta. They were so impressed. There's a National Association of Presidential Libraries and Presidential Sites. Some of them are run by the National Park Service, some are run by private foundations. But they were interested in what we had going here on Main Street Hyannis simply because of the volumes of people we get through there. We get 40, 50, 60,000 people a year going through the exhibit here on Main Street Hyannis. And they're people with really substantial presidential sites in this country that don't get anywhere near those numbers. So they were very interested in this. And Wendy was reluctant to go at first, but she finally did. She went to Atlanta, met a lot of the other people involved. They took them down to Plains, Georgia. She actually met President Jimmy Carter. Took them down to Warm Springs, Georgia, one of the FDR sites where he had a place down there. So from that point on, we both became very interested in how other communities interpret their presidents. And at this point, we visited about, I would say, about 26, 28 presidential sites. As a matter of fact, with you and some other members of the town of Barnstable, when we were participating in Kansas City in the All-America City program, went and visited President Harry Truman's home in the Presidential Library, the Truman Library there, which is a great site, and I really recommend it. One of the best sites that I have ever seen, of course, everyone's heard of Mount Vernon, they've heard of Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home and George Washington's home, but one of the best that we've ever visited is right up the road here in Quincy, Massachusetts, the Adams family homestead. It's run by the U.S. Park Service, and it's one that I would really recommend people go and see. It's really an interesting thing to do. I'm Van Northcross. I'm the Marketing, Communications, Government Relations Director for Cape Cod Healthcare.